Well, hello everybody. My name is Funmi and this is Public Eye. Our conversation today is going to be about show business. You know what they say, there's no business like show business. In the world today, Nigeria's most successful exports can arguably be said to be both music and movies. Well, maybe a little football, also perhaps a little jollof, but it's movies and music. How does show become not only business, but also economy, something that can transform the fortunes of the country for the future? That's our conversation today. I'm going to take a break. When I come back, it will be time for the show to start.
Nigeria's entertainment industry has gained more significant global popularity in the last decade than in others before it. This is true both for our movies and music, but it is especially so for our music. Nigerian music, the Afrobeat blend, has become a major export out of Africa, leaving international artists with no choice but to seek collaborations with our talents in order to tap into the cultural shift in taste, one that has seen Nigerian music become a significant beneficiary. Despite its potential to add enormous value to the national GDP, the industry is still far from meeting this potential. Nollywood, for instance, is reported to be the third largest and fastest growing movie industry in the world after Hollywood and Bollywood, while the music industry is largely the biggest out of Africa. So, what are the issues dogging the business of entertainment in Nigeria? Many, but the significant ones are the issues of piracy and copyright breaches, labor and contract complexities, unequal pay across gender divides, and an inadequate number of platforms to reach audiences. According to a report by PwC, Nigeria will be the world's fastest growing media and entertainment market over the coming 5 years. To put this in perspective, Japan, with its huge population and advanced entertainment industry, is projected to be the slowest growing market over the same period of time. Current forecasts predict that the entertainment industry will earn $14.8 billion in 2025, up from its current revenue of $7.7 billion. This steady growth will be largely fueled by internet access, which is in turn powered by the country's broadband infrastructure and mobile connectivity.
Well, welcome back. It's Public Eye, and our conversation today is around the creative industries. I mean, it's easier to just call it show business. Also, it's much more fun. Who are the people behind all of this, and how do we take it to the next level whilst we ride this particular wave? Well, I've got the people, I'm really happy to have them in the studio with me. And you see why when the camera shows who it is I'm talking with. I think she's the first such female executive of a major music label in Nigeria. She's vice president of music at Chocolate City. And she's a lawyer. She's a recognized expert in licensing, distribution, and publishing of indigenous music, content, film, TV, you name it. And she's worked everywhere. Ibukun, Abidoye, everybody calls her IB.
Yes.
Hi. Should I call you IB? Or?
IB.
IB.
IB is perfect. Thank you.
It's perfect, isn't
Yes.
it? It's good to see you.
Very nice to be here. It's an
Lovely.
honor.
And Judith Audu, actor. She's also a producer. She's worked with me before remotely. I'm glad to have her here this time around. She's got over 50 movies under her belt and over 30 nominations. She's what they call a gamma down in what it is that she does. Judith Audu, great to have you.
I'm so happy to be here.
Right. Why is everybody wearing glasses?
I don't know.
Anyway, maybe to see better. Since you're both wearing glasses, I want to start by saying, Ibis, look into the future for me. So, I mean, 10 years ago, I had an idea of what was coming, but I didn't see just how big it would get, especially with music. I actually thought it would get bigger with movies than music, but it's a little, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like music is really on a wave.
It's on a
right
wave,
now.
yes.
So, one, tell me why you think it happened, and two, look a bit further and tell me, is it a fluke or is it something we're going to build on?
Yes. That's a very good question, especially the second part of that question. But I think that we are onto something quite major, and I think it's something that when you think about just the evolution of music and the way music is such a part of everyday life, it's not so unusual that it's become so global. Because now a lot of music is consumed and technology allows music to kind of move into areas that people did not expect. And because it's a part of everyday life, you end up either hearing it on radio or you hear it in a store, and so it's kind of infiltrated. So I'm not too surprised that music is where it is. I think the rate at which it got there, and without the kind of support from I would say maybe governmental support, it's a bit shocking because it's pretty much something that has happened by bootstrapping and private investments. And typically when you see things like music and stuff entering culture so rapidly, a lot of it is influenced by maybe government helping to build some businesses or putting in some brakes via policies, certain things that sort of like help and amplify that. Like the French government, for example, do a lot of that in their culture to sort of drive the arts and all that. But with music, it's just been so organic. And I would say that especially over the COVID period, I think people really settled down a bit and people were very experimental about the type of music that they were listening to. And I also personally believe that the Black Lives Matter thing also helped because people were looking now to the roots of what it means to be black. And so people were exploring more of the culture. Music was slowing down a bit, and then they started looking at African music, and it was just like, oh wow, there's all this amazing sounds coming out of Africa. So I really think that, you know, between 2020 and where we are now, a lot happened socially that accelerated the growth of what we're doing now.
Right. Yeah. I'll come back to you and tell me a little about future, especially is it a fluke or how do we ride the wave? You know? Some people say ride the monster, you know, but Judith, what happened with film?
It's actually really weird because like you said, we all thought film would have done it because at the early stages of our life, the whole of Africa was literally consuming Nollywood. Mm-hmm. Like everywhere you stepped into, they wanted Nollywood. And then all of a sudden, music just skyrocketed and just took over the entire space. I'm not sure what happened, but I think when the advent of, I would say technology came, we took technology and lost story. So it seems like our storytelling skills was traded for technology. So we had better pictures, better cinematography, but then our story is now watered down. And then we seem to have lost ourselves in that, which we are actually gradually finding our way back into. But regardless, Nigerian film industry is still the top. You know, it's still the top, and it's still the most globally recognized film industry in Africa.
Right.
If our government even try a little bit to just...
I mean, to play the devil's advocate, it's not hard to be recognized out of Africa. We're 200 million people compared to everybody else. And we've got oil, we've got stuff. You know, you're correct. But also because I'm always worried when we go bragging around Africa, we're like, come on. This is only normal. This is only natural. But something very interesting I picked on what both of you said. Technology accelerated music.
Absolutely.
In fact, you know, the music, the storytelling or the Nigerian elements for story for music became stronger with technology. The reverse happened.
Yes.
You know, for film. It was like the storytelling there was less confidence with the storytelling.
Everybody was focused on the technology,
So it was more like, the technology, almost like, you know, they were almost like, did you sense that there was a sense of shame that we didn't look good?
I don't think
we didn't look
I wouldn't say that, but you know how it is when we always try to want to be like the West as against owning up to who we are.
So why didn't that happen with music? In reverse, because let me reveal my age. I grew up at the time when you didn't even hear much Nigerian music on radio anymore. In the 70s when I was little, we did, but from around that corpse of the 80s and 90s, you just didn't hear it. And then all of a sudden, you started hearing Nigerian music again. And Nigerian music has never, at least new Nigerian music, has a confident sound that is very much Nigerian and African. That's not the same With
with
what do you
film.
think? Yeah, with film.
So like I said, we always just want to replicate what the West are doing as against doing us. And if you notice, the films that are actually doing well outside are the films that represent us as a people. Because you can't do glam more than the West, you know. So now that we're beginning to come back and realize we need to tell our stories and stop trying to replicate who we're not. So I don't know if it's shame, but I think maybe we feel like to play with the big boys, you need to behave like the big boys, as against behaving like yourself and finding who you are and then leveraging on that and then giving them what they don't have, which is what they want to see.
Yes, I agree.
Right.
I agree with that, and I think that's the same thing that's happening with music, just piggybacking off of that. In Korea, I find it very fascinating because you look at K-pop, it's taking over the world, and a lot of it is like they have borrowed from the West, and to be fair, when you look at their cinematography and you look at the quality of the music that they produce, they have incorporated the West, but naturalized it. They've domiciled it. They made it their own. They're still speaking their language. Even with fashion, they've made it retro, but you still have a lot of like things that sort of exemplify them. And they're just doing it at a bigger scale. So yes, they're bringing, like, I imagine if they were going to do like, you know, a glamorous type of thing within their culture, they would still highlight a lot of the key locations. They would still amplify, you know, some of the things that are local and traditional to them, their food. So maybe doing that as well. If you're going to do glam, then let the gillies be like, you know, flamboyant.
Isn't that what I meant? That's a shame. Because even it's the use of the term glamorous, because what is glamour? It is modernized Korean. So it is themselves. So what is it about us? And I will come to the other bits of it, because at the end of the day, I'm very fascinated with pop culture because I'm fascinated with development. And oftentimes when we're talking development, we're talking about education. People talk about education. And when they're thinking education, they're thinking classrooms. Whereas the largest learning and continuous learning throughout life happens in culture, especially pop culture, which is where things like music, art, fashion, movies come in. So that crux of that, you know, just being comfortable enough with who we are.
We're not. We're not. And I see that a lot when it comes to our culture. And take religion, for example. So when you're watching, we love fantasy. A lot of us down here love a lot of fantasy. And there is no even Hollywood fantasy that you're watching that you don't see magicians and, you know, witchcraft in it. But we can't show that of ourselves because we are ashamed of that part of ourselves. But that is the part of ourselves that mold us to who we are. You know, we have our culture, we have our tradition that we never, you can't watch a Korean film or an Indian film, you won't see Hindu or Buddha, you know. They have done it in a way whereby you would actually want to copy it, you know. So the minute we actually try owning who we are and then replicating that in our work, I think we'll become ourselves. So when you watch a Korean film or you watch an Indian film and they're speaking their language, you can feel the authenticity in them because it is their mother tongue. They're not trying to sound like someone else. They're not trying to fake an accent. They're not trying to become someone else. And that's the difference when you're watching a Nigerian film that is indigenous and a Nigerian film that is English or that is pidgin. You could feel the acting. You can see the difference by you can feel it, you know, by just listening to them and seeing how the actors actually get into these characters by not trying to sound like someone else or be someone else, but they are themselves. So I think the more we try to come back home and look inwards and be ourselves, we would bring that Nollywood that everybody can
I think that, you know, what I found is people are always interested in money. And if we can tie this to, you know, growth and money, maybe people can see how important it is. Because you mentioned earlier that one of the things that have really helped with music and to a large extent also movies is the distribution has been widened by technology. It has also been completely changed and disrupted by technology in such a way that it can get to places that ordinarily won't have gotten into. And on the back of that, if something happens that makes people turn in your direction, if you are there, then they may begin to find something really fascinating with you. If we don't give them something interesting, you know, if we don't give them something that's authentic, you know, and for them, you cannot do a fake version. If me, I'm a Yoruba woman, and I don't care how many years you have been in Yoruba land, and you want to come and be doing like a Yoruba woman, I can smell it from 10,000 miles. You know, so if you give me that version, I can smile at you and say, oh, they try go. Oh, try go. But I know. In fact, I can tell where it is Oyo, different from Ibadan.
Exactly.
Never mind Ijebu.
Exactly.
You know that sort of thing?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's on the one hand, because the other hand is locally, because we tend to focus out. We're looking at the dollars coming in terms of keeping interest and also therefore being attractive for sale outside of Nigeria. How vital is it that we stay true to ourselves? Let me ask you, Ivy, because, yeah.
Yes, I think in music, that is what is selling us, to be quite honest. I think, and this is what I tell all the artists that are with me. It's like, I understand that the sound is pop and the sound is Afrobeats. They've given us a name, which, you know, take out the tag, it's still what we've always been creating. It's what we are. I don't think I will ever see Burna Boy, you know, not speaking his pidgin and talking about, you know, African music or a CK or an MI or, you know, whoever else. They would always talk about what is natural to them and what is around them. And
well, then, Judith, for the film industry, would you say that the numbers add up?
Well, there've always been that argument about the numbers, if the numbers add up or not, because sometimes we hear some kind of numbers and then we see the aftermath of it and we're like, you know, and then we see these things on paper and you're trying to really calculate it and the numbers don't really add up, you know. And so sometimes it's like, it's a hype. Is it a hype? But is the hype, does it work positively for the filmmaker or does it work against the filmmaker? Because then when you have these numbers and you're talking to the corporate people, they have something they've heard or they've seen and then they want to replicate that and you're trying to replicate it, but you can't replicate it because it probably never happened. You know, so there've been that argument of if the numbers are true or if the numbers aren't true. And we've now had CIEN, which is the organization of the cinema exhibitors, that have tried to make us realize that this is how transparent we can be with these numbers. So as the films are selling, you could see them. But then that's for that. So the other ones that go on major platforms, you never know what the numbers are. You never really hear what the numbers are. And I think that's like a major problem in the industry. Nobody is open enough to actually say the truth of what exactly is happening. And
why do you think that's so?
I think that's actually, for some reasons, imbibed in our culture to an extent. I think we don't really share. That's why sometimes when you ask someone, show me the way, they'll tell you it's God. You know, like God didn't come down to something happened, so can you just tell me what you did? So we never really tell people how we do what we do. So I think if we become more transparent, it would actually help the industry grow better. Okay. Because then you have these foreign people coming into the country, but because they know nobody really knows what is happening, they can easily manipulate people. And what you're supposed to get, probably like 10 times the number, they give you like a minute of it and you think they're doing you a favor, not realizing you're actually being cheated. But just because you don't know, you hear the amounts and you think, oh my God, that's such a lot of money. And then you hear someone else later on and you'll be like, oh, wow.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to come to the frameworks for the film industry itself, but something popped in my mind as you were talking. You know, Audu, when you were talking earlier, you mentioned some artists. They were all male artists. You know, some of the most successful artists out of Nigeria right now are male. Yes. There's also the argument that the film industry is actually more female-dominated. So the question, therefore, is that, is it because the film industry is more female-dominated that it's not as financially successful?
Oh wow, she didn't finish that sentence.
No, I know where she was going.
I was going to say, as it could be. And then, what is it with music and women?
And women. That's a very good question. And you know, I feel partly responsible because obviously as I've been in an executive position, I mean, I just got back into the music in 2019, but I've been at Chocolate City for 10 years now. And I can see that I'm part of the framework. And one of the things that we found, even though we've signed female artists, is at a time when we were not able to really afford to put on everybody, we found that actually supporting males and men was cheaper. right? Because the way the framework worked at that time, the record label ended up being the mothership. You were both the record label, you were the manager, you were the booking agent, you were their mommy and you were their daddy. You literally, you were their world. So you ended up having to do everything. And when you think about projecting an image for a female, you have to think about hair, you have to think about makeup, you have to think about clothes, you have to think about lashes, you have to think about, like, literally. So when you're adding the cost every time this person has to go out, it ends up being quite expensive. And when we didn't have funding, if you think about it, a lot of all these companies, when you think about Obiasika and the people that founded Audu in Korea and the people that founded a lot of all these record labels, they were bootstrapping. So they were literally taking what they got from one person and putting it back into the business because they were passionate about it. It was driven by passion and not because they had any business model that they were following or any projections that were following or any even ways or metrics to determine whether you've made a profit or not or whatever. I mean, you were keeping lean books so you understood basic accounting. But it was more expensive for you to bet on a female. So what would happen is that you have 1, 2, 3, 4 males there, then you now say, let's try on a female. You see what I'm saying? And that's what typically happened. I also think that the way our culture is set up, it disadvantages women. And I'll explain why, at least for the music business. When most of the music and everything happens at night, what's going to happen is that as a child or as a female, a young female, your parent is going to tell you, you're not going out at night. It's not safe. Who are you going to go with? You enter boat. You don't know where the boat driver is going to carry you in the middle of the night, right? So there's a security issue. We've also had cases of people talking about, being approached at the, studio where like you're supposed to be working with a producer that's supposed to be professional. And before you know it, he's making a hit on you, or I'm not going to give you your stems until you sleep with me, or like, just little funny things that make it just really difficult for you as a female to be able to pass through a lot of these hurdles. But another thing that struck me too, just speaking to a lot of men, is that, they will tell you that the way we hustle, a lot of females cannot hustle like that. And, it's arguable that maybe it's also because it's just not safe. Some of them will be sitting outside a studio waiting for hours for them to be let in to do a session, or like maybe it's late at night. All these shows never start on time. They tell you 7 o'clock, it's actually starting at 12. Then as the, artists start in lineup, you're waiting for maybe an opening, just in case. These guys just feel a bit more comfortable and confident at night than, women will. So I think a lot of all these things have kind of affected the way, females have been able to thrive in this industry. And you find a lot of them have to have male managers. They can't even have female managers. It can't be female. Because if somebody wants to beat you now, your female manager cannot block the punch. Both of you, they'll beat both of you. So, a lot of all these very strange things that we may think are not issues are issues. Right. And so now we're finding, like, I'm very involved in trying to make sure that, okay, if the issue is that we don't have enough female producers, let's have more female producers. So I'm very involved in trying to train young females to actually be producers.
Also can be said for the film industry, but women have done better in the film industry.
You also have to realize that before women took over the film industry, it was a male-dominated space. 10 years ago, the Nigerian movie industry wasn't like this now, So it was like the women wave just came like boom, and they just took over. And they had to work probably like 10 times harder than the men. Most times they still don't even get the kind of budget the men would get, because you always have to prove yourself that you're not getting what you're getting just because you have a pretty face, but because you're actually putting in the work. Until now, we still have that problem where you have a female that directed the film and you hear them saying, oh, wow, she had a fantastic DOP. That's why. But when a male used that same DOP, nobody talks about, oh, wow, he had a fantastic DOP. They say, oh, wow, he directed really well. So we still have that, happening now. There's still that bias, even though the women are the ones topping all the charts. The women are the ones taking the industry outside the shores of Nigeria and doing really great things, getting all, I think if you're counting the top filmmakers in Nigeria, you probably have just one man, in that mix. They're bringing in numbers, doing in really amazing things, and they're actually putting in the time and putting in the work. I know a lot of these women that probably never sleep at night, just working all through the night, you know, and putting themselves at risk. So the difference between the movie industry and the music industry is most times when you're filming at night, there's nothing you can do, you're there. You know, you are probably leading like 100-man crew that you are responsible for.
Yeah. There's 200 million people. You know, how many screens are there in Nigeria now?
We still have really less screens, and cinemas are shutting down,
Yeah.
you know, every now and then. So here's the problem with that. A lot of people have actually tried to monetize the millions of people we have in Nigeria. And weirdly, for whatever reasons, they always seem to figure out how to hack it. So the cinema culture seems to be prestigious only in the Southwest and in some places. But so you have 36 states in Nigeria, you have probably just like 7 states that actually do enjoy going to the cinema. Lagos for one. You also weirdly have Ibadan, you have Akure. But the other South states, they don't really like going to the cinemas. So when you count it, there are few places that filmmakers and producers usually focus on and push their markets, but it's not enough, you know. So it's how now to imbibe the cinema culture in those other regions, because people like us that grew up in Lagos, we actually grew up with the cinema culture. So it's a thing for us to actually go to the cinema to see films, because that's how we were trained. But people in the other climes are not. So in the north, you probably have just the cinema in Kano, and I think now they have one in Jos, but the one in Kano seems to be the biggest one. So it's the reason why we always look outside, because outside, our films are actually gold.
Until we adapt things to work for the environment, we can't monetize it.
True.
You know, and I'm really interested in who will see the gaps, both on the side of technology and then on the side of actual brass tacks. Infrastructure is infrastructure. And notice that you said something crucial, that if data became cheap,
Absolutely.
it transforms so many things.
For sure.
But I know also infrastructure.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have actually tried doing that. I know
Making data cheap.
Well, most of these telecommunication platforms have actually tried creating platforms where the data will be cheap and you can watch films. And a lot of them come with, they have like all these million subscription. In fact, there was one that came last year and everybody thought, oh, wow, this is it. You know, you could actually premiere your film on the phone. They had like the largest subscribers, even the biggest network. You know, they also have their own platform. But it's not doing those numbers we thought they would do. Because watching them, your data is not even really
data is not cheap.
Yeah. But they have a way that they've subsidized it for you to be able to watch films without actually losing it. But it's not making what it's supposed to make. You just put your film there, and when they bring the weekly reports, and you're looking at it, and it probably made like 100 naira or 200 naira, and you're like, oh wow. But it also seems like something is missing that they are not actually putting into consideration. I have a friend that went to open a cinema at Ojo area because there's no cinema there, you know. And then you would think, oh, it's close to a university. He would cash out. Dude has shut down. You know, so there's a lot of things.
I think there's also something to be said about your marketing strategies. I think, you know, it's one thing to start but running a business is very hard. Like, it's one thing to start a business and it's another to sustain it. And you have to think about, you know, are you actually giving the business the resources it needs to thrive? And are you having realistic projections about the time frame? Because there is, like, you know, awareness before, you know, if you look at the consumer funnel, you don't just say something to one person and they come immediately. There has to be some form of repetitive, you know, ongoing conversation about, like, it's here before somebody will even try, you know. And then when they try, what is that experience? So I think there's a lot that goes into the moment we start thinking that when we do one thing, it's going to blow up immediately, we're going to lose it from the very beginning. You have to understand that it's going to take you about 3 years for anybody to even look at you, right? And when you understand that, then when you're asking for money to be able to support these businesses, you're not looking at a 3-year run. You're looking at 5-10 years down. And that's why I was saying we need to study the French government, because when they do these things, they don't invest with a 3-year turnaround. Some of these things are like 10-year license deals or 10-year payment plans because they know it's going to take you that long. And because for creative culture, you're sensitizing a whole new people to live in a particular different way, right? So if I'm not making that much money, I'm going to be tight-fisted with my funds. I'm not just going to give it for a 5-minute leisure or 1-hour leisure time to watch the screen. So if we're going to be saying, okay, give me 15 naira out of that, you know, first of all, there's something to be said about just generally how we are surviving in Nigeria and people being able to eat.
With the economy, because the economy is just getting...
entertainment is like, it's literally, you know, a nice to have.
It's becoming luxury.
It's a luxury.
Exactly,
it's a luxury.
Yeah.
And because it's a luxury, there are certain groups of people that we need to understand are completely out of this conversation and this run. So when we're building businesses, we need to start looking from the right frame of mind.
Right. I've got to take a break so that we look at the framework and then we look at development, because one of the things you said is key. And that's that part of the development plan is this.
Yes.
Because you see, to change a people, you have to change their minds.
Absolutely.
To change their minds, you have to educate them. The biggest education platform in the world are institutions like the churches. It's not schools. Churches, mosques, wherever people go to, what they see, what they hear.
Yes.
That's why the French government, the Korean government, the Mexican government, have you noticed what those people have in common? Very strong creative arts industry. They have very, very, very strong, you know, support system. And when I say support, it's not dashing, but a framework that includes policy, grants, opportunities, so on and so forth, that makes what we see now possible. So let's see where we go now, and then see where we can go when we come back from the break. Well, welcome back. It's Filmmaker, and our conversation today is about the future of the creative arts industry in Nigeria, taking the show into business as a framework for development. And already you saw my lovely ladies earlier. We were talking with Abi and Judith. Now, 2 gentlemen will join them. And I'll start with the man in the hat. Most of the people here today won't need too much introduction, so I won't waste time on this. You already know Mr. Femi Branch. He's an actor, playwright, and poet. And he's also right now the National Vice President, Southwest, of the Actors Guild of Nigeria. Good day.
I'm still starstruck right now.
You just want to make fun of me.
Like,
You just want to make fun of me. All I want is that what you're wearing. I'm like, let's trade. Very good. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right. Also here is Mr. Asha Gangali. Did I pronounce it correctly? Mr. Gangali. Mr. Gangali is a businessman, but also a music artist. When you hear some name and you start digging further, you realize he's behind them or has been responsible for some of what you have heard on radio and seen on TV. He's a director at the Music Copyright Society of Nigeria, MCSN, and also is national treasurer at PMAN. That's the Performing Musicians Association of Nigeria, isn't it?
Yeah, Performing Musicians Employers Association.
Yes, they keep changing this thing. I remember it from when it was still just PMAN. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, and you don't look a day over 20. How do you do it?
I stay in my 20s.
That's a good way. That's a good way to put it. Before we went on break, we were talking about the framework for development. I know that PMAN, when I was talking earlier, I remember the days when the battle was just copyright. You know, the battlefront has moved forward and we are where we are now. I'm now looking in terms of the point where we are at now to where we need to get to. What would you say, I'll start with you, Mr. Branch, what would you say would be the most significant, framework? What needs to change for us to see significant, and measurable growth in the industry?
Thank you very much. Well, that question is like huge because it can be approached from different angles. We have a very, very big, huge industry that has different, compartment functioning in it. But, so if you ask that question, it depends on who you're asking.
Yes.
That's what's going to determine.
So because you
I'm
are,
going to speak
as a
yes,
guild.
Yes, I'm going to speak
guild,
purely as an actor and as representing the Actors Guild of Nigeria. And not just because I'm a member of the guild, but because I truly believe that for us to move forward, especially for actors in Nigeria right now, we need to have some sort of structure. Actors have suffered a lot in this industry over the years, and they continue to suffer. I'm on every set, and I say that with every sense of responsibility, every set. And I'm hearing one appalling story or the other. I was on a set some days back. It's really take me a lot not to mention this person's name, because I was especially disappointed because I felt that, okay, there are certain people that, okay, like, for instance, now, if I'm on Judith, I've worked with Judith, quite a bit over the years. And there are certain things that when I'm on Judith's set, I do not expect to see. She's one of the producers that I have great respect for, not because she's here, but because she cares about people. Do you understand? And I think that's what's really lacking in a lot of producers these days, the way they treat talents. They put so much emphasis, put so much resources into technicals, into getting the right equipment, getting the right locations, infusing the right amount of glamour and all of that. And they do not put enough premium on the talents, especially the actors now. And it's really sad. This particular set I'm talking about, because I'm always having young actors coming to me, not even because they know I'm the vice president, Southwest of AGN, but because of who I am in the industry, and they see me as a senior colleague, and they always complain, okay, they've not given us food, okay, they didn't pay us, okay, they told us to come since 7 a.m., we've been here, this is 10 p.m., nobody has even asked us what we're going to eat, and we've been here for like so-and-so days, we've not been paid. And the saddest part was the one that happened on this particular set. They called those actors on that set since 7 a.m., they didn't do much with them, they didn't give them any food, they left them on that set around 1 a.m., They just drove over when they finished, just packed up and drove and left those extras there. And on the way home, one of them got killed. Yeah, he lost his life. I'm still going to take that up in my, through my office. I'm still going, because I feel it is the height of
responsibility.
I don't even want to use the word irresponsibility. I think it's just wickedness. For you to bring people on your set to work for you and you don't care, and you use them till that late, you don't even care how they live and how they're going to get home. And this happens more often than we care to mention right now, because it's really like the norm, sadly. And if the person is not a member of the guild, then there's only so much the guild can do to defend or stand for that person in case the person...
So in terms of, because this example you gave is very present and very stark. You know, I've also worked for people for years, for decades. The guys working with me now, they have snacks break and they have lunch break. It's not possible.
As it should be.
Never mind anything else. So I'm thinking, in terms of policies, because some of these things can become laws for which you can report people.
That's right.
Which can become a problem. I'm not a believer in expecting people to use their church mind only. We should also use the other mind.
That's right.
So if you had this, because this is drastic, there are certain things that should be standard and agreed, and this is something that can be lobbied for, to become part of law. You can start even on the state level, and that the Actors Guild can propose a bill, can push forward for that. That's just a wild example off the top of my head.
Yes.
Is that a possibility? Because something like welfare in that regard looks like the sort of thing that you can get some sort of... I know that the laws are what they are in this country, even if it's a deterrent.
Yes.
Is it a possibility?
Yes, it is possible, but I think before we start thinking about approaching the government and on that level, I think there's quite a lot that we can do within the industry. Now, what we are presently working on is to have a synergy, and that is something that has eluded us for years, and that is why we are where we are right now in Nollywood, because there's no synergy between the associations, that's the Association of Movie Producers and the Actors Guild of Nigeria, the Directors Guild and all that. And for any of these legislations to work, there has to be that synergy. Like, there has to be, like, for actors to be protected, for the Actors Guild to be able to, like, truly be able to protect actors in situations like this, there must be a synergy between AMP and AGN, that's the Association of Movie Producers, and the AGN. Now, we will be able to then tell our members that, look, if they're getting into any production, make sure that the producer is a member of AMP. If the president is not a member of AMP, if anything happens to you, we will not be able to do anything to protect you, you know. And vice versa, the producers will also be told that, look, don't use any actor that is not a member of the Actors Guild of Nigeria, because in case anything, because we have had cases where producers have problems with actors not turning up on set or collecting money and not working, and you know, the AGN was called upon, and there are cases where we treated one some time back, and we're able to like step in and mediate between the producer and the actor, and you know, sort things out. But the only solution, if one, we can get our actors to understand the importance. If our practitioners generally, producers, directors, costume people, and all of that, to understand the importance of being a member of a guild or their associations, because there's so much they can gain from. We need to first do that. Then after doing that, we need to now try and create a synergy between the guilds and the associations. That is the only time we can protect our practitioners, be they actors or directors or producers or whatnot. So I think before thinking about going to government, we should first start within ourselves, and it is possible.
Right. I'm gonna come back to you, because also immediately I'm thinking, I remember the time that, you know, I can't remember if it was a guild that banned some actors. Because immediately people will start thinking, you two can become Draculas.
That was the marketers.
The marketers.
Classic example.
Yes, the marketers.
And they could do that because they were united.
Because at the time they were the only one in control of the industry. But right now, if you ban someone, another industry can take the person off.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, Mr. Asha, what about music? It seems that music is fine now, Abi?
Very far from it. First, we are seeing, sadly, 0.5% of the total revenue. The industry only see like 0.5%. And this is according to statistics from PwC. 95.5% of the entire revenue goes to the telcos. They are the only recorded, they have the only recorded revenue of the industry. So first, when you have 0.5 going to an industry, that the labels has to share with the artists and the management. So you already have a problem. Now, also, that's one part. That's from the recording segment. And PwC did not audit the licensing segment, which is the copyright. And that's the monies that's supposed to, the royalties that's supposed to sustain the artists. If IB is aware that KPMG did an audit on the licensing segment, it's in shambles. The rest of the world, America, Europe, Asia, they're recording multi-billion dollars per year, per quarter. You know, I mean, and that's even one society, because in music you have societies are licensed to collect royalties. Like I'm a director at MCSN. There's been turmoil in that segment. I was just talking to IB, like, how are we going to fix this copyright segment? We're not seeing revenue. So totally, what we are seeing is the incubation of Afrobeat music on a global stage that has started climaxing. You know what I'm saying? We've been seeing it. We've been trailing it. And what all we simply did was dispositioned dancehall reggae. And we now became but you see, if it's not managed well, somebody else going to come and kick us out. So we're making an entrance. We have a Billboard chart, even though it's US based only. That's a concern, because they don't have accurate data coming out of Nigeria. So when you don't have data, just like our brother said from the movie industry, my big bros, it's data. And like you said, rightfully, we need a legislative framework that's going to protect the three segments of music: copyright segment, performing segment, and the recording segment. You need a legislative framework. Then you need institutional framework. Like you said, like the AMP has to work with the AGM. The music industry needs to have an institutional framework that the stakeholders will be bound to operate by. That's the only way you're going to close the revenue gaps.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, we're still struggling.
What framework, on a policy level, or framework, I don't know if it's just one, what could make a difference?
For me?
Yes.
I think we need to unlock certain revenue streams. There are some that are already available to us. So, for example, the private levy. essentially what the private levy is that any fund that is brought into the government, into the country, they assume that those funds are able to store a certain amount of data or content, film, music, whatever the case is. And so they take that percentage out of the phone, or the fee from the phone, as tax. And the idea is that that tax is then supposed to be distributed to the organizations that are responsible for those content. And it's sort of put back into the system. That's one way. Private levy, let's put it into the system. Let's unlock that. Whatever is required to unlock that, let that go through. And with the banks, they created a system where people were able to access loans, access grants for a longer period of time to help them invest in certain businesses. So if you come and your company is set up in a way where they're not asking you for collateral, for example, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense that anybody be asking for collateral on a house when you are barely able to fund a movie, right? So how are we measuring and valuing the intellectual property, the IP? What's the value? And how are we using that to sort of give loans to these people to help them grow? Individual businesses.
Speaking about that in particular, I know that Central Bank and BOI,
they do have a fund.
They have a fund.
Now,
You have a fund, but you can't access.
Yeah, that's the challenge. That's the challenge. A lot of it is that a lot of the businesses that we have, because people are doing it based on passion, their businesses are not structured to be able to access these funds.
So, I mean, I wanted to speak to them because I have gone through that process. I've looked at the requirements, and they're very interesting, to say the least. They're interesting because you can see the effort is there.
Yes.
But the yardstick,
it's not localized.
It's not localized, and it doesn't understand the industry.
They don't understand the industry.
So
they've done a lot of stakeholder meetings, the banks, to try to understand, especially the movie industry, because it's very tricky to understand the movie industry. And we have explained severally how it works in the movie industry. You can't give a filmmaker a loan and expect them to bring it back in 1 year or 2 years.
Absolutely.
It's impossible. We've tried to explain this severally to them. So the loan is there, but how to assess the loan is a problem. So the people that can assess the loan don't even really need the loan. The people that actually need the loan can't assess it. So the amount that you can assess that actually really need the loan, it's probably, say, a 5 million or a 10 million. What kind of film do you want to shoot for that amount of money? If you want to make a quality film that you want to make money back and return.
Yes.
So therein lies the problem.
Yes, and I completely agree with you. I think they need to change the framework for local businesses.
Okay.
Understanding that majority of people cannot access it. So how do you bump them up to be able to access it?
Can I shed some light into that?
Okay, yes. I wanted the gentleman to come in, yes.
Yeah. The problem is this. Content cannot be collateralized as it is. And without that, you cannot secure a loan. Because until you fix the copyright system, that's the problem. Because the copyright protects the content. The content now, the bank has to be able to respect the content enough, see enough value in ROI to be able to put their money on it. Until we go that route, like the rest of the world. I mean, people are acquiring catalogs for millions of dollars.
But I think that speaks to the fact that it can be collateralized.
Yeah, it can be collateralized, but when you don't protect the copyright.
So we're saying there's no copyright. So for example, I can't just go and take Star Trek.
Yes.
You understand? And if you take Star Trek to the bank, that is value. It's very interesting now, the conversation we are having, because this conversation within banks like the BOI and other banks, there needs to be people who understand that's what you're saying. Because I'll give you an example. So for example, in the UK, there are all kinds of incentives in all these other countries that we envy, that we don't understand. For example, if your film is declared to be made in the UK, there's a whole process for it. You get 25 to 50% of the film back. Yeah. People use film to do business. Yes. So, and the process, I have filled that form before, so I know how it is. It's a long process, but it's a very clearly defined process with milestones. At the end of the milestones, once you hit it, the money is coming into your account. You don't meet anybody.
Yes.
You don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So what you're explaining now, even in terms of what those values are I have never, and I have spoken to people in banks, and these are good people who try very, very hard.
Yeah.
But this information is not, is not as
crystallized.
It's not as crystallized. I
think that's the problem. The problem
right?
is that they're good people and they try so hard, and they didn't or they don't really need to. All they need to do is have people like you.
They need to hire the right people.
Who understand.
Hire the right people.
Like, you can't have a banker discussing entertainment. I'm sorry, you don't know anything about entertainment. Even if you understand the finance part, have a department that is solely music practitioners. Hire people that have the experience, and they are in the bank. You open a department where it's entertainment, and you're only hiring people that have worked at labels, that are musicians, that are this. But they'll tell you, I work at GT Bank. My role is content and finance, whatever the title is. But that's what I mean. We're putting the wrong people with good intentions, but just not the right people.
That's not there.
So until we focus with a very clear mind as to what we want to do, I don't think the future is, the future is what we do today.
I think we need to be more union-minded, because what protects practitioners in other parts of other climes across the globe is the fact that they are association operate as unions, where we can now have recognition from like SAG-AFTRA in America and all of that. And if I'm doing a job as a member of, you understand, we can have,
one another,
you understand, and I'll be respected and compensated accordingly. You understand? So we need to understand that look, we might make efforts individually to do all this. And we have quite a number of Nigerian actors that are broken into Hollywood, but they've not really broken into Hollywood. Yeah, we see them every now and then strong and all of that, but it would be the journey would be so much more easier if they had a guild here which they belong to, which was recognized by, you understand? So it's like, okay, I'm just coming from, it's like somebody you see how easily British actors translate to America and everything. You now be asking, okay, this guy is actually supposed to be British, but the way he crossed over, and you understand, we need to be able to build our guilds and our associations to that level, or being able to operate as a union. That is the only time we can actually be able to protect our practitioners. And our practitioners also need to understand that for that to happen, they need to identify with the guilds. They need to join the guilds and build internally, because so many of us are criticized from outside. What's the AGN doing? AGN is not doing anything. As long as you continue to do that, then nothing is going to happen. And you can only go so far as an individual.
Judith.
I feel I'll go back to the government again. So for filmmakers, I think we actually don't have an enabling environment in Nigeria to strive. So we always struggle too hard to make things happen for ourselves. That's why we always celebrate every little wins we get, because we know how crazy it is to make a film in this country. You take your film to the cinema. If your film makes, say, 100 million, you probably are not taking home like 20 million or 50 million from it. We're getting ridiculous tax from it. I think that's one place that the government needs to visit. So even if you're not going to make this environment enabling for us, stop taxing us so much for it. It's killing. So you see a filmmaker make so much money, you hear, and then you see them, they're suffering. I can count how many Nigerian filmmakers actually do have money. So I feel that's one place the government need to visit. Don't tax us so much if you are not going to contribute into our industry. The little you can do for us is just make the industry enabling for us to do this. Entertainment is what is putting Nigeria in good light outside the country. I remember when there was the city-to-city spotlight at the Toronto International Film Festival, where Nigerian films got to screen, and 100% of the people there were government that did not even know how the filmmakers that their films were selected got to TIFF. So they use us to shine outside, but they are not actively empowering and contributing to how we succeed. Tax rebate is a thing. We don't even have any treaty or with any country. So when a Nigerian producer is trying to do a co-production with another country, it's a problem, because there is nothing between us and any country. I think they are just trying to work one with South Africa and Canada now. We don't have. You know, so in every single economy, you have the government actually in that space doing something positive. In South Africa, they have access to a lot of funds.
I mean, if we start
You
that,
know.
we won't end there. I think
Yeah,
that's-
so for me, I feel that's one thing that they can do,
Yeah.
you know, to make it
make
move
it-
forward. And then as filmmakers, to make the industry sustainable and move forward, because we have a lot of international platforms now spotlighting on Nigerian content. I think what we now need to do as filmmakers is, aside being unionized, I think as individuals, we need to be good people, you know, and within ourselves, do what you feel is right and protect your content. In protecting your content, protect your industry. Because when one person sell out, it affects the entire industry.
That's
So
it.
when these guys come, they usually come with a lot of money to invest. And then someone else would come and say, oh, no, what you gave us
gave
too
us
much.
too much.
I can do it. We just cut it by 3.
That's right.
And then when they do that, they won't now give you that much anymore. Like, yo, he did it with this amount of
so,
money.
yeah.
You should go figure out how you
That's
do it.
also what unions are important for.
Yes.
Because
You
in
can't
some
reach
parts of the
somebody
world, you
that-
can't even do that. There's a standard
Exactly.
base which you cannot go beyond.
That's right.
So because we will not be able to sell your content.
That's right.
So a lot of the
Exactly.
things those platforms do, and it's interesting, we always have a new one we celebrate. Before that one, there was another one.
Yes.
You know, is that when they realize that this is how you are, they start giving you peanuts.
Yes.
You know, also, once again, back to the Asian example, if you don't build yourself to a certain stage, like, excuse me, if you want to even come here, this is the level. Otherwise, it's not going to work, because they don't come because you need them, but because they need you.
It's exploitation.
You know, they need you.
Yes.
And that's where we really need to live. I mean, for me, this conversation, unfortunately, we can't do the question and answer anymore. You know, sadly, I can see some people, you know, looking at me with daggers. I'm really sorry. I have no more to say today. I want to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
I used to say I'm also starstruck. I really love what you have all done. And I've got so much learning from each and every one of you here. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you for having
All
us.
right. That's our show. That's our show. Of course, the conversation continues with you. If you have contributions to make, comments, and if you wanted to reach out to any of them, you can reach us on all of our social media platforms. And if you are that inclined, if you are still old-fashioned in that way, send an email. We don't mind. Call us, WhatsApp us, whatever you want, do it. Let's see us to build the kind of reality we really say we want. Thank you, and bye-bye.